This is the second collab film, which is very much about asking 5 leaders what makes for successful collaboration and what are the demons inside themselves, what are the things that they have a habit of doing that they know as the leader of collaboration usually messes things up. What are the instincts they need to sort of knock out of their heads?
I think we all live in partnership meetings, and I think people like me spend huge amounts of time in partnership meetings. But often you're trying to do this very much on a part-time basis. You've got some people who meet now and again, you'll have another meeting in 6 weeks' time, you'll hope that something might happen. The reality often is that you get out the minutes a week before the next meeting and rush around trying to do something, and I think that is massively frustrating. I think in most of the situations you've got to establish a full-time team that are going to make this happen. You've got to invest in it, but trying to do it fitting around everybody else's day job, all you're doing is putting more pressure on your own staff. And the thing just elongates so far that people just lose energy and interest.
How you see yourself is entirely different to how other people see you and your role in it, and how they react to what you say will often be governed by how they see you in the hierarchy, if I can put it that way, the informal hierarchy of any meeting or any of the process. And you have to find some way of getting to a point where this genuinely feels like there's a level of equal, not everybody's equal, but a level of equal kind of contribution and equal status in the collaborative process. And not being aware of that can actually lead you to think you've got everybody on side, and in truth you haven't, because they've not really come clean with you about where they stand, and so the thing unravels over time.
You set off to make a film and you know exactly what direction you should be going in. The problem is you've got a lot of people begin to chip in, and their sense of direction is 1%, 2% off from yours, and then another person's 2% off, another person 2% off, and all of a sudden, by being a nice guy, you suddenly discover you're actually not making that film, you're making that film. And one day you step back and say, that's not the film I wanted to make. And it isn't the film you wanted to make. The problem is, it is the direct result of a whole series of small, human, completely decent compromises which have actually destroyed your objective.
You do have to listen. I agree you have to listen, but you're there to listen. You know you have to listen. What you have to remember to do is to watch, because if you don't watch, then frankly you have to watch out. And it reminds me, I'm just remembering as talking about this, I once broke down a long time ago now on the hard shoulder, and a lorry driver came along and he picked me up and he gave me his pearls of wisdom. And his pearl of wisdom was, don't just look at the indicators, watch the wheels. And I do try to remember that when I'm driving, but I particularly try to remember it when I'm in meetings, because in meetings, of course you listen to what people say, but watch what they're feeling, because what they're feeling is going to govern the outcome.
The ones that get my goat tend to be the silent partners. I don't mind generally people who are challenging or even arsey in debate, because you can thrash things out in debate. What I have a difficulty with is people who are constantly reserving their position. And first of all, I think it's important to understand where those individuals are coming from, whether it's a different organisation or whether it's about them or whether it's about a set of objectives that actually are coming from a completely different place from what you understood to be the purpose of the collaboration. So you have to spend time with them, and you have to work out the best way of flushing out what the real issues are, and they tend to be people who simply don't operate confidently or comfortably in a collective environment. But some of those people can nonetheless have real power and leverage and influence, and even though it's a bit irritating, you need to spend disproportionate time usually with the people who are less energising and less collaborative, precisely because the other ones you've got a clear and relatively straightforward sense of common purpose already.
When I've been trying to structure meetings, I often make a point of sitting myself in a relaxed fashion, which would enable me to become alert to when I can feel those neck muscles tensing, and when I can feel my hands grasping the handles of the seat, too strongly. because then I know that my feelings are actually talking to me and presumably everybody else. And I need to be watching out for that, because the danger is that I too will be thinking subliminally, well, what does this mean for me? What about me in all this? And I can therefore be obstructing the meeting just as much as anybody else.
I think the greatest one for any police officer certainly is impatience. We tend to be very can-do and action-orientated. Sometimes in a partnership that's good to move things on. Sometimes I think it can be a bad thing because we're too willing to get on with things and don't take the time to create the relationships and establish common values. So I think that's the side of me. It's really impatience that you're having to try and deal with. Sometimes your own wish to lead things and take control, but often the fact that you don't particularly want the chair and you're happy for somebody else to chair can work against that. But I think it is often impatience that gets in the way. But sometimes that is a good thing, and if that, as I say, forces you to actually look at why is this taking so long, and as I say, to have to make a hard decision, we're going to have to commit more resources to it. Perhaps that's not a bad thing.
The instinct is to get in there and sort it out myself quickly, if I'm really honest, because you think you can see the way through the issue. You've thought about it, you know what you think the answer is.
Well, I think I probably was capable of, and still am, of going at both ends of the spectrum wrongly. In some cases, too dogmatic, not actually listening, thinking I was listening when I wasn't. In other cases, seeking a bogus degree of consensus when actually you needed to thrash issues out and get more clarity rather than fudge.
I would suggest that one of the other keys to all of this is, if you want a successful collaboration, you start off by packing your own ego. So you can be authoritative, you can be ruthless, but that doesn't involve your ego. If you start being ruthless because of your ego, you're in every kind of trouble. Yeah, I think probably the most difficult thing I had to learn along the way, most particularly once I became successful, was how the intervention of my own ego inevitably damaged what I was trying to do. Because it's baggage, it just gets in the way. It prevents you from empathizing, it prevents you from fully understanding what you're trying to do, it prevents you from setting a good example. That's the most important thing. I think, yes, that's the key. Good leaders set a really good example. That's your job. Your job is to exemplify the very best of what the people around you want to be or want the project to be.